All right, welcome everybody around the world. Welcome to all my subscribers. Hopefully, my microphone is working. So if you can't hear me, just let me know. Usually, it is always working, so it should be fine. For this video here, it's not going to be a long one, but I just wanted to touch base with everybody again on this topic of the rapture and the end days coming in 2023 or 2024, which, as I've said for many years, it's the title of my book as well. It's not always just been about 2023. It's always also been about 2024. So as 2023 is nearing an end now, we only have about 3 weeks, less than 4 weeks. And welcome everybody as well. Good to see you as well. Evening. But now that we have a few weeks left, I had one person reach out to me and on YouTube, and they said, "Oh, it's sad to see 2023 is coming to an end, and you had spoken about all this stuff." And I understand and I sympathize, and it probably, like, my feeling doesn't matter, but I feel like 2023 will come and pass, nothing will happen, and probably into 2024, like sometime weeks or months will probably go by and nothing will happen. That's just my gut feeling, but who's to say that's right or not? So that's personally what I feel. It wouldn't surprise me. It's not like I'm convinced that it will happen in 2023. I've always said it could be in 2024. There's a few reasons for this. It's very logical. So for this video here, I'm not going to be quoting stuff and getting into long-winded things. So just a quick touching base on this topic. And I wanted to give some reassurances for myself, for everybody, okay, on this whole topic here. How credible is it? And all of that there, right? Because I'm not just like a car salesman out there trying to pitch a car. This is something that I believe and live by as well. I take it very seriously. I've always cross-examined it. So tonight I thought, how could I present it like that there? So the book of Daniel, from which comes some of the most important prophecies that show the years 2023, right, and 2024, if you want to say as well. That's from the book of Daniel, the prophecies of Daniel. Now, that book there, at the most recent, was written like about 100 and something to 200 BC. The most recent. I believe it was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, but nonetheless, it could very well be 300 or 400 BC if it is from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Some people argue, oh no, it's got to be more recent. Even if it was the most recent example of 100 something to 200 BC, it's still pointless to argue, because at the end of the day, the fact is, it was written by somebody before any of the events took place. I mean, even in 100 BC, that's before, it's 100 years before Jesus was born, basically, right? Like 90 something, right? But my point is, it was hundreds of years before many events, like 170 years before the fall of Israel to Rome. And, it's just, it doesn't matter if it was written in 100 and something, 200 and something, 300 and something, 400 something, or if Daniel himself wrote it in 500 and something BC. All this doesn't really matter. The fact is, it was definitely written hundreds of years BC. 100% definite. Somebody wrote it. And it doesn't matter if Daniel wrote it or if somebody else wrote it. The fact is, it's been regarded by everybody as scripture. When we all read it, it feels like scripture and inspired, right? And also, it's been approved by all the wise people and everything. It's been held at by people of Judaism and Christianity as scripture. Okay, there's no argument or question in that. And the prophecies in it, and the prophecies that point to 2023 and 2024, have been confirmed by history. So it'd be one thing for this book to just be giving prophecies and they don't line up with history way off into the future, but it did, and everything fits perfectly, right? With the Dome of the Rock in 688 AD to 1948 AD is exactly 1260 years. These events are way far off from Daniel or whoever wrote the book, even if it was somebody in 100 BC. It really doesn't matter. It was somebody who wrote it, And the funny thing is even if they were charlatans, I've said this before, they were the most lucky charlatans ever, because if they were, I mean, they're either authentic or not. They're either authentic or charlatans. If they were a charlatan, meaning they made it up, then it's more unlikely that a charlatan could just make something up, like predict future history, and the most important number related prophecies come true according to future events. Like, it's less likely that a charlatan could pull that off by chance because he's just making it up. It's more likely that someone's giving a prophecy and it comes true, right? And in Daniel, it gives a whole pile of numbers in this important prophecy. It's the most important prophecy. All the chapters of Daniel build up to it, and it culminates with this prophecy, like the whole book of Daniel, right? It's definitely a very important, or the most important prophecy in the book of Daniel. It's probably one of the biggest and longest prophecies in the whole Bible because it covers, I think, like whole chapters basically. And on top of that, the numbers given 1290 days, then the 1260, and the overall 1335 from the 1290th. That there is very logically mapped out. I've cross-examined that a million times. To save time on the video here, there's no way that it's wrong. And one of the best ways to prove it, to show that it's not just my conjecture, in Daniel chapter 12, verse 7, and I explained all in my book here as well. But in chapter 12, he says, the angel tells Daniel that you take this measure of time, the 1260 day years, from the completion of the scattering of the holy people, right? So in 70 AD is when the completion started. That's when Israel fell to Rome. And then, but yet the exile continued. People continued to leave Israel for hundreds of years, and it still continued until 640 AD when Islam conquered Israel. All that still occurred, and even still occurred after they conquered. Okay, but when the Dome of the Rock was built in 688, that's when they had officially conquered and began to rule Israel. And it literally took place for 1260 years until 1948 AD, right? And then in 1948 AD, Israel was reborn. This is not something that a charlatan could predict, and all these other things so accurately. And also the 1290 years coming in, it specifically says in the prophecy from when the continual sacrifices were moved. This was speaking about Nebuchadnezzar taking it away, and that historically is confirmed to have happened in 602 BC. Okay, and this points exactly to 688 AD for the Dome of the Rock. So everything's connected. I talked about it more in the book, but all these events, right, were, so Nebuchadnezzar coming and taking away the continual sacrifice was known to the author of Daniel, whether it was Daniel himself. I'm sure that it had happened by the time or during the time of Daniel. And if it was somebody after Daniel who wrote the book of Daniel for whatever reason, but it's still scripture and all that, and still, appointed by God, um, he would have known about it because it would have been a past event to him. It would have been history to him or her, whatever, right? So at the end of the day, when you're trying to look at this critically and cross-examine it and scrutinize it and all that, what you can see is that this book is definitely ancient. It's more likely that it is prophecy because of just how many things have come true. All the numbers from 602 to 688 being the 1290, and then from 688 to 1948 being the 1260. And then in 1948, it's the rebirth of Israel, which means the ingathering of the peoples, which marks the end of the start of the period, which is the completion of the scattering. Like the angel said, that marks the start of the period. So obviously, when that ends, the ingathering can start again because the scattering has stopped, right? Well, the completion of the scattering marked the start of that rule. And then at the end of the rule, that influence stops, and then the people can come back in. That's what I meant to say. So all these things are confirmed by histories. The only thing that has yet to occur is the end that was talked about, which would be 75 years later, which marks the 1335th. Okay, now there's a lot of support for 2023. Number one, a minor thing, is that in the life of Abraham. He was born 1948 after creation, which is a completely different calendar. And when he was 75 years old, the Bible points out that's when God spoke to him from the heavens and told him to leave the land of idolatry and go enter the promised land. That was in 2023 after creation. So that's a little minor interesting thing. But like I cover in my book here, I went way out of my way in my studies to find altogether these, two of the pillars are not my discovery, but the other pillars are my discoveries. And for example, the first chapter, just one of the discoveries, is the 6,000 years of human history mapped out, all in the Bible. It's all there on the pages with the numbers and everything for everybody, and you can see for yourself that it culminates in 2023 or with 2023. So it's definitely going to happen. There's so much support, and there's other scripture which confirms 2023 as well, but I'm not getting into that detail because I've got to go somewhere. So I urge everybody to get that book. This book here, it's available on Amazon. Just search for my author name, Enoch the Witness. But it's definitely going to happen, though, because, like I said, it's got to be a real prophecy. These things have all come true. If the Bible's not real, and if these things aren't real, and it was us somebody making it all up, i.e., a charlatan, then they are the luckiest charlatan ever. Like the prophecies are very explicit with the defining points for the time periods. It's not vague like Nostradamus. You know what I mean? It's like from when the continual sacrifice is taken away. That's telling you the year to take it from, and it tells you the number 1290, right? And we know day for year principle, right? And if he was talking about literal days, that'd be illogical. Why would God give such a specific prophecy that's like 3.5 years long and then an additional 75 days? That's ridiculous, and it doesn't fit with anything in history. It's preposterous and illogical. We know in Ezekiel chapter 4 that God repeats that he says day for year, when he gives these numbered prophecies, where one unit of time cryptically represents a larger unit of time. So, i.e., day for a year. So we definitely know that he uses day for a year because God says so in the Bible, in case you're wondering or doubting that. So day for a year is fair to apply. Like I said, it's the only logical solution there because literal days don't make any sense. Why God would give it, and they don't fit with anything. Okay. If they were years, it would make a lot more sense. And if you apply the years, 1290 and then the 1260, you see all those historical events confirming absolutely everything. Okay. So I think it's absolutely concretely proven that it's got to happen in 2023 or 2024. Some people might say, why 2024? Well, for a few reasons. Number one, it could be that, number one, we don't know. I think, putting it simply, I think that the periods of time are going from points of time, like key events. Okay. Only God knows the exact minute, hour, day, or whatever, right? But all we can generally go by is we know that, okay, in 688, that was the year officially recorded, even by Islam, that the Dome of the Rock was built. Okay. It wasn't completed in that year, but it was built, commemorated. That was when it was honored, right? And we know 602 BC. So we know the general years for all these key things. Now, 1948, more recent history, we know the months for certain things. We know the month that the war was won. We know the day that the war was won. We know the day and all that, that according to politics on paper and all that, legally, Israel was reborn. But there's all these different days and marker points that God could actually be taking the measure from. And at the end of the day, we don't really know any of that stuff, right? So all we can really do is just go by the year, which is the only thing we can logically ascertain. We know that in 1948, the war ended, Israel was reborn. Okay, you could technically push it to say 1949 because I think some things in terms of the politics level took place, but that's what I'm saying. It depends what point you're taking it from. But even aside from all that, I think using just logic and free flowing common sense and all the prophecy and blatant evidence, it points to 2023. Okay, obviously 2023 is almost finished. So unless it happens the next 3 weeks, which is still possible, right? My gut tells me it probably won't. But it doesn't mean that it's a failure, because it never had to happen in 2023. I've said this from day one, because you have to allow for a year of flux. We don't know for all these ancient dates the exact months or the specific points where God is taking the measure from. Okay, so it could happen in a January or December, which is separated by 12 months. Okay, so if you took the measure from a January of the year 2000 or from December in the year 2000, they're both from the year 2000, but one of them is 12 months older than the other and 12 months longer, right? So you see what I mean? So that's why you have to allow for 1 year of flux, right? It only means you have to wait an extra year, right? But it's logical, okay? It's very, very logical. Okay, and outside of that, so that's why we should have we should wait for 2024 anyways, is 100% logical reasoning, because God, it would make more sense that God is going from key events, right, than just mere numbers. Okay, and also when you, if you want to say that he is going by mere numbers of years, we could get into the uber complexity of, oh, have the calendars changed and this and that there and all this, right? But at the end of the day, what we can see is that everything with the numbers beautifully fits, right? As I show in the book. So I think that supports that our current calendar is actually good to go and everything fits quite well. So I don't think there's anything to worry about, right? But um, what was it? I've lost my train of thought there. Um, but anyways, right? The reasons why I think it's a credible theory, like I said, it's got to be a real prophecy. The historical events have confirmed it. It's going by the most important prophecy in the Bible, which gives defined numbers. That prophecy instructs us, doesn't command us, but it instructs us basically to count the number of days until the end. It calls it the end explicitly. I mean, and all this together is very, very compelling, if you ask me. And when you have all that other supporting evidence that the 6,000 years ends with 2023, I'm starting to remember what I was talking about now. Okay, yeah, it was the year flux issue, right? So thank you. So now that I remember what I was talking about, I can get back to that. So the year flux issue, that's why it was never about just being in 2023. I think it's more logical that I'll be going from key events than just the number of a year. Okay, like I said, uber complexity of calendar change. But on top of that, you have Hebrew calendar and Gregorian calendar. But if we go from key events, we don't have to worry about all that calendar and sun and moon and stuff. We just go from key events, right? Now, the interesting thing is, like I said, because the month can vary January to December in a Gregorian year, which can also slightly differ from the Hebrew year. The interesting thing is when you take it just from key events, you kind of escape all that complexity, right? That's the interesting thing. For example, like Israel was reborn in 1948, right? So if you're just going by the number of the year 1948, that's fine, right? You don't have to fuss about the month and all that there, but that's what I mean. So that's the kind of cool and interesting thing. So we know historically, like a historian being a say an atheist or whatever does not go into their historical study on this thing, on this topic, with a religious bias, right? Like they go into it scientifically, like clean from that there. And historians have confirmed that it's 602 BC when Nebuchadnezzar took away the temple implements and thus stopped the continual sacrifice, right? So that's an affirmed date. 688 AD is an affirmed date. But that's the year, like I said. But I don't think we have to fuss about the Hebrew year and the Gregorian year, as long as we allow for a year flux, like I said. By allowing for a year flux, it gives that range of tolerance whereby it accommodates for the difference between Hebrew and Gregorian, right? It accommodates for that January to December range. It allows for all of those. It's just waiting an extra year, right? And I think it's only fair. So, and plus, at the end of the day, like I always said, 2023 is the final year. So, if it is going by Gregorian in God's mind, I don't know which one it is. Maybe he's going by the Hebrew calendar, Gregorian, or maybe some weird synthesis of the two, or something just beyond that. I don't know how he's doing it, right? What we can go by is the calendars that we use. right? But at the end of the day, I think the key events are more important, right? And in 1948, I think it was around the time of March or something like that there. So it could be in the first few months, like say March of 2024. That's one strong contender, I think. Okay. Or if God's going by the political level when it was like official, legally, on earth papers and all of that there, that could be 1949. So there's actually other reasons why it could be pushed back further. Because like I said, the Dome of the Rock was built and like honored and it's official 688, but it wasn't complete till 691. See, technically, even if we're going by these key events, we could have that 3 years of flux on that reason, right? Um, this is more of like a situational principle than more like a mathematical, logical principle for year flux, right? But 1949 is a backup contender, right? And you'd have to find, sympathy for that with the 688 date. Now we know that, yep, the Dome of the Rock did take until 691 to finish. So 689, we're not out of the realms of reasonability here. So 689 to 1949, if that's what God is measuring it from, then that could be the period of 1260 years. It still fits with everything, doesn't defy anything. All those things like the completion of the scattering, the ingathering, all that still applies. We're only, it's only talking about a year or so, anyways, or a few years at the most. So that's a possibility as well, right? So allowing for 1 year flux is logical. That means we have to wait the whole of 2024. That's only fair and sensible to do. But on top of that, we're not God. We don't know what the exact events are that God is taking the measures from. We know generally what they are because He told us, right? But we don't know the exact day, month, and all that there. If it's on one certain year, like 1948 or 1949, because we don't know the exact specific thing that God's measuring from. But we can get close enough to know, right? And the other thing that helps, I think, is that, but I think overall, the most plausible is 688, 1948, 2023. I think that's the most plausible because you don't have to go into awkward side avenues like the most obvious and abundantly obvious things happen in those years. 688, Islam itself says that's the official year. Okay, that's one good reason to take it. That is the beast nation that Daniel foretold, stating such in the current time. Okay, and also, like I show in the book, there's other prophecies and the biblical chronology of 6,000 years that ends with 2023. So we have different avenues that also back up 2023. 1948, that was the year Israel was reborn. That was the year I think that the war ended as well, but I think that's minor compared to the rebirth of Israel. I'm pretty sure in 1948 the ingathering did start, right? So even if there was some politics in 1949, I think the most plausible scenario is 602 BC, 688 AD, 1948 AD, and thus in line would mean 2023 AD. Okay, so but again, we don't know what month God is taking these measures from. Now, I think if we allow for this 1 year flux, I think going by what I think is the most plausible scenario, I think in 2024 we should expect it, right? I'm not all hyped up on the inside for it happening after Christmas. Maybe it will. I don't know. Some people have said they've had dreams or this and that there about it happening at Christmas time. It's possible. You never know. It could, bam, happen at the end of a Gregorian 2023. But I think the reality is God's probably not just sticking to Gregorian. So that's why my gut instinct is I'm not worried that it's going to happen in the next 3 weeks, but it still could. Don't take me wrong. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. Um, I just think it's probably more plausible that God's not sticking to Gregorian, even the Gregorian fits with everything here. Well, that's irrelevant. If you stop and think about this as a topic, I already done that. So, but what I think God would do is use Gregorian, Hebrew. He'd be going by the key events. He would have like his own calendar type of thing. He's going from like this bird's eye view above it all type thing. So only God knows the day and the hour, like the Bible says, and that's why it says that, because only He'll know the day or the hour. but we can know generally when it will happen, 2023 or 2024. And I even have a chapter in the book, what happens if 2024 goes by and nothing occurs? Well, if you read that chapter there, it goes into some other alternatives and with the best logical reasons and justifications for it in each case. And I think it goes up to, where is it? If I can find the chapter real quick. Um, where is it? Yeah, page 103. Yeah. So without reading the content, I'll just read the sub chapters from this little chapter, right? So the first one is, could or should be 2024 anyways. That's right. Spend a few paragraphs describing, like I did in this video, why it should have been 2024 anyways. Then 2025 will be due to 1 year flux. And then 2025, 2026, and 2027, i.e. it happening in those years, could be due to something called starter. It's just the subtitle I gave it, right? 2025, 26, 27, start or finish of the dome. So it depends where you're taking from with the Dome of the Rock, right? Um, and then the last ditch chance, as I put it, will be 2028 and 2029. What's the reasoning for this? Oh, right. And this is based upon it's a super slim chance, like I say, but in Psalm 90, it does say that we could have an extra, up to an extra 5 years. In Psalm 90, it talks, I'm not getting deep into everything here, but in Psalm 90 it gives a range from 70 to 80 years. 75 in that example corresponds to 2023, right? So if nothing happens in 2023 or 2024 for your flux, and even nothing happens after that, this is the slim chance that there is something scriptural that's about time periods and the end. One can say Judaism and Christianity both hold Psalm 90 as a prophetic verse about the end of days, prophetic psalm, sorry. I think it's also the psalm where it says that a day with God is like 1,000 years. But what it's showing is that it could be a minimum of 70 and a maximum of 80. That's what it talks about. But it says it's cut off and it is carried away swiftly or something like that. So cut off could represent 75, which would be 2023. But like I said, if nothing happens, a last ditch chance would be the maximum of 5, which would take it to another 5 years, right? Which would be 2028. So it could be at the end of 2028. And I'm not going to read this whole chapter to see if the year flux would still logically apply to that. But offhand, I did put the subtitle as 2028, 2029. So, and those are reasonable possibilities. Like I said, if nothing happens during these periods, I would honestly be surprised. Would I lose faith? Well, not necessarily. But I've been thought about this, right? I don't think I would lose faith. It would be highly disappointing, but I've always told myself, and I say it in the book, and this is the best thing, right? Whether it happens or not, at the end of the day, we're all going to meet God and have a judgment day when we die, right? A lot of people die suddenly, unexpectedly, unwantedly, right? Some people live really long lives. Whenever the end does come is irrelevant. Whatever, you know what I mean? We're all going to die at some point, right? If you're lucky enough to be translated at the end days, whatever, right? Even if you don't experience that, we're all going to die at some point. Then we're going to be judged, right? So if the end's coming soon, it's kind of sad because then you lose your life and everything here that you know and love. It'll be very horrifying to go through all those things. Even if you're being blessed and taken, it'll be horrifying. You know what I mean? It'll be scary as heck. Be concerned about people who'll be left behind. It'll be a mortifying experience. You know what I mean? Flying up into the air, if you're scared of heights and all that, it'd be mortifying, it'd be terrifying. And all these things being taken away from the earth, taken away to the heavens, you feel all these cosmic distortions within you, like leaving the planet Earth and losing your home. That, you know what I mean? All these things, and it would just come suddenly to you. If none of that happens, you still got your life, right? Even if it's 10 years away, or if the end doesn't come and you live another 100 years, whatever. When you die, you're going to be judged, and then it's going to happen then, right? But going by the prophecies in the Bible, it really does strongly, I can almost quite certainly say 100% appear um, to be 2023 or 2024. And the world events right now are lining up, right? So we had those mysterious world noises. I talk about a lot of this stuff in the book, right? A lot of the mysterious world noises started happening, um, in the last 10 years or so, from 2009 or 10. I got it documented in the book. They started around that time. It was like nothing like this had been heard before. Science has investigated it. They don't know what it is. That tells you something. Still to this day, and millions of people around the world have heard them, and they still continue. So there are real sounds like this happening. So that's one thing. UFOs are on the increase. UFOs showed up around 1948 and have only increased. Like if you look at a chart, the sightings and their presence, visibility, and pictures and camera recordings of them is just skyrocketed. Same with meteors, rocks, bolides, and all that falling down from space. That's gone up like ridiculously on the charts as well. So we do see these things tangibly happening. We also have seen the skies going blood red from red auras, which are due to certain type of solar activity. I think it is, right? That happened. They happened in these final years. I think it was in like 2020 or 2023, something like that. 2022 or 2021. And they only happen like every. I think the last time it was seen. I think I mentioned it in the book because I researched all this. They can happen. It's not like it's never happened before, right? They can happen. There's conditions for them, right? They're not all the time. They're rare. They're sporadic. They don't really have set cycles. And I think the last time it happened or something like that, there was like 60 something years ago. The point is it's not something that happens all the time. Like eclipses happen every year. Okay, every year there's an eclipse. So you're talking about eclipses over Israel, whether lunar or solar. Well, they may not happen every year, but they happen every chunk of years, right? They're not rare events. Like every person who lives in Israel will experience numerous solar eclipses or lunar eclipses, even blood moon eclipses, and many full blown solar eclipses in their lifetime. Or at least once, right? Because they happen by these cycles, even if they're a little bit sporadic. Um, but we did see the red auras, right? So, and the prophecy in Joel and in the New Testament said God would make the skies go blood red, and that stars would be falling from the skies. That immediately precedes Jesus. But there'd be pillars of smoke in the heavens. So when these bolides and rocks fall, they do leave pillars of smoke, right? So, when they hit the earth, they're very destructive. That would be the hail that God's sending down. So God said that these things would be signs. Pillars of smoke could be volcanoes erupting. I researched on if volcanoes have been erupting more, but I don't. It's not. Trust me, it's not like skyrocketing, right? They might be more frequent or something a little bit, but it's nothing to hoo ha about, right? Not like the UFO sightings and the bolides and fireballs and meteors going by. If you use an astronomical program like I have, right, where it tracks all the stars, meteors, and everything like that, their asteroids, celestial bodies, like all the little rocks spinning by, has all their meteor numbers and all that, right? You could track them. I did it. I zoomed forward. You could speed it up, slow it down, so it goes by like 1 year every spin, like this year, right? And you can go like 1,000 years in the future. You go like 1,000 years in the past or whatever, right? So I just zoomed forward. I zoomed back, and what I saw was that in 2023, up until the end of the year, there were tons of these rocks up there flying around the Earth. And if you zoomed in on the Earth, there were quite a few that went through the planet. Now, I've never seen that before. I got this app like years ago, like 4 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, for this purpose, right? Because if something was going to hit the Earth, I would get alerts, right? So, um, but looking at it now, you can see that they're flying around the Earth. It's bonkers. All it's going to take is for one to deviate or go off course, or for a bunch of them to, or some. And they've also learned that there's many unknowns that are always hidden behind the sun, right? And that at any given moment they could fly around and hit us, right? So there's lots of stuff out there that could hit us. And if you look at the actual space out there, there's tons of stuff flying around us, like really close to the Earth. Like I get alerts when something flies close to the Earth, like within lunar distance or so, and a bunch of them have. Okay, in the last few months, right? Not to say that never happens, and that alone is unusual, but it is highly active right now. Now, ironically, as the next years go by after 2023, that activity just drops and goes away. It was kind of disappointing. It went all the way up to like 2028 or something. There's a few that come real close to the Earth that could even hit the Earth. None of them are like planet destroyers or anything, but they could do something crazy. But at the end of the day, when you have ones hidden behind the sun, anything could come at any time, and that would be unexpected. Um, so and also when things deviate, and also even NASA, if you go to their own website, like I have, fact checking all this stuff, they only know about 10% of all these bodies that are out there floating around that could potentially hit Earth. They only know about 10% or less. Okay, they say it on their own websites. Okay, and they have like 10,000 objects they track right now called near Earth objects or potentially hazardous objects. One of the two categories says like 10,000 objects, and altogether they only know about 10% at most that are out there floating around. So, the ones that are being tracked and all that on these apps, they're only the ones that they know about and can track, right? Maybe if it gets close enough to the Earth, I don't know if that app can detect unknown ones, right? But all the ones it does track, they have the names. So unless it or some association that is working in sync with this app automatically classifies a moving body if it's unknown, it's possible, right? It would make sense, but I don't know for sure. I'd venture to guess that the app just goes by 10% that they do know, right? So just keep that in mind too, right? Looking at these things doesn't mean that's guaranteed. Um, But anyway, so these things are happening in the world. And what's the other thing that's happening? Obviously, unfortunately, this conflict that's going on between Is and Ha. And I'm not even going to mention the names or get into all that stuff there. You know what I mean? But this conflict that's going on right now, this war, whatever you want to call it, is really just seeming to fulfill the things talked about in the Gog Magog and end of days prophecies. So it's definitely not unlike it. It's definitely exactly like it. So I never thought before that that was going to be what Ezekiel and others talked about with Gog and Magog, right? And Jesus and Revelation. But it very well could be. It's just based on the timing. I couldn't even make it up myself. Like if I was to invent a script going by what I believe will happen, I would have to include Gog Magog invading. And I've had my own assumptions and choices of what Gog Magog could be, right? It's either from the Beast Kingdom, which would be from that anyways, right? Or it would be giants, or a mix of the two. Okay, so giants coming from the underground kingdoms being released, right? In the Revelations 9, when the trumpets are being blown. So it's gonna be one of the two, right? And Satan's gonna round them up, and they're all gonna go up and attack Jerusalem and Israel. The ironic thing is they started to attack Israel already, okay, and maybe even Jerusalem. I'm not sure, but it's already happening now, and the very things that said were going to be done and all this have been done, and it's exactly like what the Bible said was going to happen. So for all this stuff to just be, this stuff is not happening for no reason. You know what I mean? Scientists cannot solve these cosmic sounds for a reason, okay? Because they're cosmic. All these mysterious things. Why did the UFOs start showing up around 1948? I mean, of all years too, right? It's just laughable. It's just funny, but they did, and they've only increased. Whereas the average person now is probably seeing a UFO, right? If something's happening and cooking and stirring up on the planet, it's undeniable. And you combine these physical, tangible things that are happening in the world, and the unfortunate things like this war and everything. And when, especially, I have to mention, it's not just those two. It's not just Israel and them going at it now, but there were times where it was talk where other nations would join in, like especially at those type of points there. That would be right up Gog Magog alley, okay? Because Gog Magog prophecies are about the nations go up, Gog Magog, the nations go up to trample Israel and Jerusalem. They go to attack them and this and that there, right? And they do all this harm, and then God comes down with fire and hail from the sky and defends them, and it's going to be the rapture and the end of days. So it's like the buildup is actually happening. right? Euphrates River is actually drying out. I know it's just because of a dam, but still, you know what I mean? Everybody else is saying it like it's a prophecy being fulfilled. I'm at least going to acknowledge it's because of a dam, but still, and it's exposing all these caves and tombs and cool little temple type things. That's pretty cool. We didn't know that was under there until it drained. But those type of things back up that okay, this area is pretty ancient. You know how old that stuff must be for it to be under the water level. And not only that, but the Bible talks about in Revelations 9 the Euphrates River will be dried up. It says it in like two, maybe even three places that it'll be dried up so that these Nephilim fallen angel armies can come out. So when the Euphrates does actually drop in our current day, we notice, oh, there's all these openings and entrances. Some of them are like man-made and carved with blocks. Some of them are caves. So there actually are entrances under the Euphrates River, and it's kind of freaky when you see all this stuff like happening, right? But I think it's very, very possible that it could go down. And we all just have to stay ready and be watching. That's all. Well, no, not all, because we have to reform, right? I do too. I've been doing better than I ever have been, but still not good enough. I urge everybody else to reform as well because we have to be ready, waiting and watching. Being ready means you have to be reformed as well. You got to be ready. It's not just about being alert and ready like that, but being ready. You can be ready and know you might know exactly when Jesus comes. Maybe you guessed it just right to the second. You could guess, you might get it right. If a billion people guessed it, some people are going to get it right, right? So you might guess it, get it right, be there waiting for him with a bow tie on, and then, but you're not ready spiritually because you're bad. You're a bad person. You know what I mean? You didn't change yourself. You're still doing bad things and all that. That's not being ready. Being ready is being ready, ready. So being ready, waiting, and watching, that's what we got to do. So, anyways, I'm already late to go do something that I want to do because I've talked too long. But I just want everybody to know that there's very good reason to believe that it could happen. And we still have a year left to wait. It's not about it's going to fail in 3 weeks. Trust me. We have a year left to wait. And it could very, very well, verily happen at any point in that year. Okay? And then after that point, is all hope lost? No, because it could still happen in those next few years for still fairly good reasons, right? Dome of the Rock date and the 1948, 1949 thing, right? Then after that point, like the hope will start to dwindle away. But like I said, then we still have the underlying thing that is very important. We have to always remember, regardless of if the end, regardless of if the end comes in our lifetime or not. The most important thing to take away, the golden moral for the story here today is that no matter when it does happen or if it does happen, is that we're all going to live, we're all going to die. And when we die, that's when we meet our Maker and He's going to deal with us, right? And if we're good, we have faith that we'll be taken to a good place. If we're bad, we have faith we'll be taken to a bad place, right? Because we have faith that God is good. So that's the most important thing. And that'll take you through your whole life, no matter how short or long it is. You know what I mean? And you don't have to worry about when the end's gonna come. But I did a lot of hard work to find out when the Bible says. I didn't do all that hard work for nothing. That's why I'm gonna still stay ready, waiting, and watching for when it does come. Because I'd feel pretty sheepish if I was like, at the end of 2023, gave up waiting. Like I'm tired. I am tired of waiting. I've been waiting 20 something years for the end to come, right? So I am tired of waiting, right? And I would like to give up, but at the same time, it's more gloomy to give up than to keep being bored and tired of waiting, right? And you know, like I said before, it's not all cotton candy when the end comes. It's gonna be horrifying and scary. Like if you get translated, say goodbye to the body you know right now. That's gonna be scary. That's not gonna be easy. You know what I mean? All this stuff, even if it's beneficial to us, is gonna be scary to go through. Maybe losing some people that we care about. I don't know. I hope that doesn't happen. But you know what I mean? Losing the planet Earth. So it's gonna be scary stuff. But at the end of the day, I keep talking too much, so I'll just shut up. But anyways, I really I've thought about that for a long time, like over 20 years, and I'm more convinced. And trust me, I've battled with doubt a lot in recent years, but after my worst up and downs, like a few years of going through ups and downs, and then the lowest downs and all that, all my introspective and cross examination, analysis, blah, 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 and all that, my logical conclusion is that God has to exist, right? He has to exist just based on logic, okay? And like the world around us and all of that, there, I've said it a million times in other videos, but real simply, like everything we're experiencing right now is impossible. Time, space, and matter are all impossible. Like time cannot have a start, space can't come from nowhere, and matter can't come from nothing. So everything that we know and experience and are right now is impossible. Like if you start thinking about what you are as a person, you're just a the ability to decide. That's all you are. You're the ability to decide, which is an intangible, invisible thing, housed like a computer program inside like biological circuitry inside a biological organism. But all you are is just the power to decide. And that's all it is. You're like that decider aspect of the computer program. You just decide everything. Everything you think, want to think, do, every motion, action, everything you do, you just decide everything. So how you react to things, you know, everything. That's all we are, right? So, and everything, time, space, matter is impossible. It's a paradox. The world we live in is a very strange place. And which came first, the bird or the egg, right? All these things very simply show that God has to exist. It is literally kooky. Like it drives you out of your mind trying to think what the heck it is. Like if you want to even pretend that God doesn't exist or consider that God doesn't exist, there is no way to answer those crazy paradoxes. Which came first, the bird or the egg? There's not a single scientist on this planet who's ever been able to answer that. Period. It is literally a logical paradox. You cannot answer it. There is no solution. Okay? Because the actual reality and solution is that it's another solution. It is not that solution because that solution is impossible. It's a paradox which has no solution. So it is not the paradox. So the presented paradox cannot be the reality. Okay, so if you need a bird to lay an egg, but you need an egg to hatch a bird, which one came first, right? Science wants to tell us about evolution. Everything came from bacteria. Bacteria turned into algae and then fish and then reptiles, amphibians and birds and mammals and monkeys and then humans and then all this and that there. They want us to believe that, right? But which came first, the bird or the egg? Can't answer that. It's impossible. But yet the world's full of birds. World's full of animals. All animals in all ways in some form come from eggs. So it applies to every form of creature. Everything's impossible. Absolutely impossible. It cannot happen according to what science has told us. It is impossible. The only logical solution is that there is a creator. Okay? That is the only logical solution. That something created it all. Is that possible? Well, yeah. When time, space, and matter and everything we know is impossible, something has to be possible. Okay, so if everything we know and exist with is impossible, logically, by all our brain power, it is impossible. There has to be a solution. And the only other solution is that something created this, because there is no other solution. So there has to be God. Okay, is God good or evil or in between? That's the next great question. Well, if he is evil, he's doing a terrible job of being evil. Okay, if he was good, then he's doing a good job of being good. Okay, is he in between? Some people speculate that, like the Gnostics and all that. I'm not getting into that for here today. I think he's all good. I think that this world is like a testing ground. It's an in between zone, right? So that's the long and short of that. So I think everything has an answer to it, everything has an explanation, but God is the only answer to all those great mysteries. And that's why there simply has to be a God. There just simply has to be. Even if God is just an invisible, like cosmic mind. But see, ironically, that's what the Bible says God actually is. He says that he's invisible. He doesn't have a body. What would that make him? But a mind. So God is a cosmic mind. So, like, if you die and no God appears in front of you with a body saying, "Oh, hi, I'm God," it's not to worry. God is just a cosmic mind that permeates time, space, and matter, beyond time, space, and matter, because those things aren't actually real as we perceive them to be. They cannot be. There has to be something greater that exists, and something had to create and regulate and do all this, right? You cannot have evolution from nothing as science has presented, because which came first, the bird or the egg? So every single different created form had to be created differently, even if minor evolution is possible. I think God allowed for creatures to hybridize and for minor evolution over time, but I don't think that everything evolved from nothing. Okay, so that's what science can't answer. So there definitely is a God, and what will God be? A cosmic mind. So that's what he is going to be. If he wants to make a body for himself, he can do whatever he wants. We can't tell him no, right? But by default, God is a cosmic mind, for lack of a better term. He permeates everywhere. He's got omnipotent type power, right? So that's what God is. But is he good or evil? Like I said before, well, there's more reason to believe God is good than evil. If God was evil, the world would be a much worse place. Okay, the dominant force on earth is actually good, like across the board. Even if there's bad places, that's just the concentrations of bad, right? But the world is overall good. Humankind is overall good. Okay, and I don't mean perfect, but overall we're good. We're not bad and evil. Evil is a minority, right? So if God, the omnipotent one, was evil and his inclination was to promote evil, he'd be doing a very bad job. He wouldn't be really exercising his omnipotence, and he'd be rather lazy. Okay, I think bad things happen for a reason. I won't get into all that type of stuff here for this video, but I do talk about it in my other book, like I've shown people before. This one here, which is available on Amazon, a couple chapters on that. But I think everything has a fair and logical explanation, even the most difficult things to understand and explain. So that's why I think God does exist no matter what, and that when we die, we're going to meet God. And I think if were omnipotent, you wouldn't remain neutral, and I don't think you would choose to be evil and destructive. I think the logical solution is constructiveness, because like even if you live as ancient cavemen and you had different little clans, it is beneficial to everybody to be constructive to one another, to the environment, and to everything. And then if you did that, everybody would prosper. But when you have some people who are destructive and they might rob or steal or attack or chop down too many trees or kill too many animals and wipe out a species, you know what I mean, and different things like that there, and the destructiveness starts to rise up, then you only have these two primal forces, to speak two hemispheres, construction and destruction. So if destruction rises up too much, then the world's going to stop being a constructive place to live in. It's just going to be chaos. So if God was evil, then the world would be chaos. But a chaos world isn't viable anyways, because it would just destroy itself and it wouldn't exist anymore. So, and if God was evil and was intent on creating worlds just to destroy them, then the worlds wouldn't be as peaceful as they are, dominated by good. Okay, like I said, if God was evil, like some religions believe, unfortunately, then we would see more evidence for that. Demons are at the whim of human beings, even according to Satanism. Um, that goes to show you that the dark side, if the dark side can be controlled by a bunch of teenagers and losers, then you know what I mean. Just I'm not saying they're all losers. I'm just saying it's like teenagers and a bunch of losers who think they can do dark arts or whatever, and other groups of people. If humans, my point is, can control demons and command demons to do things, then that shows you that the world is not controlled by evil. Okay, because if evil controlled the world, then those creatures and evil ones would be running around doing all sorts of stuff to us all the time, out in the open, and it'd be utter chaos, but it's not. So God isn't evil. Okay, is God neutral? Some might argue that he is, like the Gnostic people and all that, and they have long-winded explanations for this. I'm not getting into all that. Is he neutral? I don't think he's neutral. I think there's more logical explanations for everything bad that does happen. We appear to be in a neutral place. At times we appear to be in a place of evil. I think we are in the lake of fire. God makes good worlds in the lake of fire. This earth is one of those good worlds, so it's a nice place to live. It's not perfect. Everything dies here, but it's still a nice place. It can be as nice as you make it if you allow constructiveness, right? Or if destructiveness rises, then God steps in and punishes, like with the flood, with Sodom and Gomorrah, and all that there. Um, that's what I believe, and that there's worlds that are worse than this, or that are more hellish, or you know, more punishing than this one. That's what I believe. So, and I believe that once we've been refined, once we've been able to prove ourselves and become good, we'll be released from this prison, so to speak, and be allowed to go back up into the higher worlds, which are blessed, and we'll have everlasting lives and all of that there, and be with God and all of our other loved ones and all of that. So that's what I personally believe. And I also stubbornly personally believe that God will give everybody a chance, even those who are particularly bad. Over time they might change, and after so much time, there's only so much punishment you can give somebody. If they're suffering eye for an eye, then they have to wait that out. You know what I mean? But at the end of it all, punishment is going to end. I don't think there's eternal punishment. I go through that in the book. There aren't even words saying anywhere eternal punishment. Um, all punishment comes to an end. So that's my outlook on things. I think that God wants everybody to be reformed. Some people might take tens of thousands or maybe even millions of years. My point, like the evil ones, like demons, right? But at the end of the day, at some point, everybody has the power and the ability, even bad beings. Because the bad beings used to be good ones, right? Even Satan, all the bad beings, the fallen angels used to be good ones. They did something bad, right? And if everybody's going to be given time to reform, I'm not saying that certain fallen angels will be given a chance to reform. That's not up to me. I'm not the judge. Only God can. But in essence, hypothetically, God wants everybody to reform. He doesn't want that people stay bad. He wants that everybody, even the worst, become good, because constructiveness is better for everybody all the way around. Destructiveness serves no purpose. Now, as an overall principle, now there is need for destruction. There is constructive destruction. Okay, if there's an old tree that's rotting and it's going to fall over and smash a building, it's constructive to destroy that tree. Follow me? Okay, if there's a lion for whatever reason attacking your village, killing everybody, it's constructive for everybody else to destroy that lion, right? This is the logic, the beautiful logic that is in all things, right? But when sadistic people go around flaunting destruction, destroying because they enjoy destroying, there's no logical principle to this. They just think destructive is a greater power because look, it smashes things. This is like caveman way of thinking, right? Constructiveness creates the things that you want to smash and destroy. Which force is greater? You couldn't smash anything if the creative force didn't create those things and construct it, right? So constructive force is the dominant force in nature. Even though destructive force destroys, destructive force wouldn't exist without constructive, right? So constructive force is the dominant force in nature. And I think that if God is a primordial cosmic mind, that over time he probably learned how to gain, or whatever, at some point he gained omnipotent power and mastery over these quantum pre-existent forces that existed beyond space, time, and matter. And he learned how to, or maybe he was just born ready. I don't know. Maybe he instantly figured it out. I don't know. Maybe he was the first and only, and there was no time, and he just figured it out. But if God's a cosmic mind that's outside of space, time, and matter, and he has the power to create, and he's omnipotent and all that, and there's no laws of physics to hold you back. So what's stopping you from creating? If he spent enough time, he would have learned, even if through trial and error. If he had to develop and learn, hypothetically, even he would learn, or anybody likewise of sound mind would learn, that the constructive force is better. So I mean, even if evil people took over the world and ruled it, and it just turned into pure chaos and destruction, the whole world would end up being destroyed. Just like even if you have a decent world, but evil leaders gain power and blow up the world with nukes in a one-day event, same thing. You don't need 10,000 years of medieval Dungeons and Dragons darkness, right? You just have like a nuke event, right? But it serves no constructive purpose, literally. Like it would just destroy the world be destroyed, be nothing left to grow. It'd just be ridiculous. There's no point going through that. Even the super sadists were like, oh, well, we enjoy that. That's what we want to see. Okay, well, you can only see that so much until everybody else is gone, everybody else is dead. You know what I mean? And once everybody else is dead, what's going to happen? There's going to be one person left in the end, right? When you're going by their model of thought, be one person left in the end. What purpose is that going to serve? You get like the super nihilist, like what is it called, the Lich from Adventure Time, who just wants destruction of all life and for everything to cease. Okay, right? They don't care about anything serving a constructive purpose. They just want everything to cease. What can you tell them? Well, I don't know. But evidently, nothing with that mindset has omnipotent power, because if they did, then nothing would exist. So, obviously, nothing of the Lich level mindset has any degree of dominant power. So, a good being, a good inclined being, a being obviously inclined for construction exists. He's not just neutral, because everywhere you look in the universe is full of life, and in terms of planets and galaxies, everywhere you look, I mean, everywhere, that's construction. Everywhere you look, everything's so well ordered. And look at our planet, and everything's so well spaced, and the moon is spaced, and we have tides and seasons and all this. Temperatures are just right, delicious food, nice smelling flowers. There's probably similar beautiful things in all these other planets. That's construction, right? So we can definitely see that there's a constructive God. Construction is the dominant force in nature. If there is a God, which there must be logically, then he's going to go with that flow. He's going to go with the constructive flow. And the longer you spend in the constructive flow, the more constructive you become. And then, if you're gaining power and becoming omnipotent, you're going to become the omnipotent, righteous God who likes to live by this law and order of constructiveness, to maintain this order of constructiveness. And I think that's what God is. I think that's what he is. And then he constructed these worlds that go by time, space, and matter, like these strange paradoxes, or maybe it's something outside of those that we don't understand. But he created these worlds that we know of as time, space, and matter, and whatever others for beings to exist in. He created good worlds for good beings. He created bad worlds for beings who had been bad. Right now we're in a world where everything dies. So I would say that we're here because we've been bad. That's what I would say. And that's what I believe. So anyways, to me, I think everything has a logical explanation. I've had those experiences like 15 years ago, whether they're real or not, only God can say. I've chosen to decide that they were not real. They're certainly lifelike, and life changing, but I'm going on the notion that they were not real. I'm waiting pending on God's approval. It's going to take something pretty cosmic to prove that. But, anyways, but if they are real, just being fair and considering all things, if they are real, it would just outright prove that God is real. So, and that he is all those things I just mentioned. So, but also all the other religions of the world, pretty much collectively, I mean, even tribal peoples, everybody collectively says God is like a cosmic mind who just has crazy cosmic omnipotent powers. So, like, everybody over thousands or hundreds of thousands of years basically has been saying the same thing. So it's not like anything far fetched, right? So, and it doesn't go against the grain of anything. It's all logical and everything. God wants us to be good because good is being constructive. You know what I mean? If you rob somebody or do a sin, all those sins are destructive in some form, either to you or to others. Every single last one of them, right? So that's why, if you look at it in terms of hemispheres, constructiveness, destructiveness. Every time you do a sin, it's destructive. Right? Every time you do goodness, it's constructive. So the more good you are, the more you're on the light side, right? The more you're being destructive, the more you're on the dark side, right? So the more you're destructive like that with yourself and your mind, you become depressed and miserable and negative and dark, and it's like a gloomy cloud over you. You know what I mean? Like Grumpy Garfield all the time, right? Whereas on the other side, it's those people who are jumping around all bubbly, right? And they're having a good time. You have the power to be both, right? And that's what we need to be. We need to be constructive. It's constructive to feel happy. You feel happy, it makes all these good feelings go through you and all that there. That's what everybody needs to do. And being a good person makes you feel happy. So, and that's what everybody needs to do. So anyways, I've blabbered long enough. It's been 1 hour, but that's all you can do, whether the end does come in our lifetime or not. But I think we all need to be ready, waiting, and watching, because it could very well happen. Thankfully, because I don't want all these terrible world events to happen. It's not like I want this Israel war conflict thing to go out of hand just so we can see Gog Magog prophecy unfold. I don't want bad things to happen. That would be destructive thinking, obviously, right? Right. And I had a big turn of thought weeks ago when I was thinking about all this. And I was like, I would actually rather the things get toned down some. Now, in Judaism, I just remembered this actually. In Judaism, it's always been taught that God can do that. In Nineveh, in the Bible, as an example, God was going to destroy Nineveh like Sodom and Gomorrah unless they reformed. So he sent Jonah to them to repent. Now, they ended up reforming, and then God said, okay, I'm not going to destroy you. So things are conditional with God. Even if God says it somewhere in the Bible, I'm going to destroy you, is conditional. So if you reform, then boom, he's not going to destroy you. But if you keep doing the stupidity, then he's going to destroy you, right? So I think that's how it works by. But anyways, back to what I was saying with this war thing. I don't want negative things to happen, right? That's not what I want to see happen. Yes, I would like the end to come, and whatever has to come with it has to come with it. But it's not that I want those bad things to happen. So what was it? I asked. What was it? I asked God for something about this. Um, sorry, I can't remember what I was going to say about that war thing. I was so close to what I was saying though, but I didn't want bad things to happen. It's like I want the end. I just can't remember what I said to God, but it was like, I want the end to happen, which would mean, all these people. Oh, that's what it was. Yes, that's what it was. Like I said earlier, the beginning of this conflict, when it broke out, or whatever the right term for it is, the war, other nations were said to be thinking of joining in against Israel. All those nations of Islam, okay, this would just be 100% what everything is said in the Bible prophecies, even further. And this would really look like it. That's why when they all said that, and some of them could get their fingers on nuclear weapons, they'd be more than happy to martyr people, even their own. They don't care, right? That's in their script, right? So that's some doomsday scenario there. I don't know why China and Russia would be siding with certain people. I'm not saying anything against them because I have nothing against them, right? But I'm just surprised that they side with certain people in this, but whatever. But at the end of the day, right, nations are going to do what nations are going to do. And thankfully, oh, that's what it was, yes, because I didn't want to see terrible things happen. I still want the end to come. So it's like, I was praying to, I'm not saying that my prayer made it happen, right? I'm not saying that, trust me. But I'm saying I was praying to God that, it won't go out of hand, that they would start nuking everything, right? Or destroying the world with some crazy nonsense. Like, please don't let that happen. Like, even though I want the end to come, please don't let it be all bloodshed and nasty like that there, right? That's what I was saying. And thankfully, it turns out those other nations, they're not really stepping up the plate to join in against Israel really at the moment. And like some of the Saudi nations, I think it is, like have been speaking out against all this stuff, which is good. Like I'm not gonna say pro-Israel, but you know what I mean, like kind of like pro-Israel, like and against the terrorism side of things. I was being careful with the words that I use, right, not to upset anybody. But you know what I mean. So some nations of that religion have actually come out, doing something good. I think so. That's actually reassuring. So thank God for that change. But at any given moment, that can change. At any given moment, if any of those peoples get hold of a nuclear bomb, even if all they do is shoot one nuclear bomb, they could do that. Okay, and there'd be nothing stopping them. Right, going by their track record, it'll probably fly back and hit them. Right, then just blame it on somebody else like they always do. But the point is that it'd be very easy for them to get their hands on something like that. I'm not wishing any doom, but we can't be sitting there like ostriches with our head in the sand. That is a possibility. Okay, and there's other nations out there who'd be more than happy to go against Israel. Right, it's in their religion to do it and all that. There, be more than happy to do that. They want to do it. Their leaders, their spiritual leaders, and all that are all on camera saying that they want to do that and eliminate Israel. So at any given moment, any day, any time, they could just all jump together and say, "Hey, now is the time," and then go do something crazy, whether it's nuclear or not, right? But when all those nations jump in, and come in against Israel. That's got to definitely be Gog and Magog. And always remember as well, what the Bible says is going to come in the end days is not that unrealistic. Okay, the most far fetched thing in the whole of the book of Revelations, believe it or not, the most far fetched thing, and we can say this now in our modern day with technology because we didn't know certain things. Ancient people have been more far fetched. The only far fetched thing in the book of Revelations is the release of fallen angels. But that's not that far fetched. The fallen messengers are just extraterrestrials, according to the Bible. They were cast down to earth, Satan and his minions. Revelation 12 says they're cast out of the heavens. That's where they were. Heavens is outer space, according to the Bible. Right? I talked about that in the book. Dozens of verses back that up. Right? So they're just extraterrestrials. They might look just like us. I don't know exactly what they look like, but I think they look like us, and they probably do. Right? But whatever they look like, who cares? The point is that's all they are. Are they 400 feet tall? We don't know. Are they 20 feet tall? We don't know. Are they our size? It doesn't really matter. But it says the fallen angels will be released. Is that really that far fetched when we know now that aliens are real? And how many planets are out there? And all the UFOs we see flying around now, some of them are probably bad, doing bad things. Some of them might be good, doing good things for God, right? At the end of the day, is very plausible. It's not impossible that fallen angels will be released from some type of prison. It's not like talking about, oh, God said unicorns will jump out of the sky shooting rainbows. No. Okay, so yeah, that's perfectly reasonable. I think the most far fetched thing that the book of Revelation says is where like these hordes of like these legions, these armies of like monster beings come out, like these demons. You know, they could just be symbolic for things. That is possible. But the interesting thing is those creatures sound a lot like Greek and Roman manticores, which makes me wonder if maybe these things were some strange hybrid Nephilim creation that actually did exist. But nonetheless, they are like that. But they could be symbolic. But that's the most far fetched thing. And maybe they are actually just a species of creature that maybe just lives underground and is released when the earth is split open in Revelation 9, which is that chapter that I'm talking about. So maybe they are just a real creature, and just the way they describe it, it makes it sound fantastic or more fantastic than it is. You know what I mean? It might just be a type of ancient reptile that had like proto feathers and looks furry. And when you look at it, it looks like has like a snake tail, but then it looks like it has a lion's body or a lion's head. You know what I mean? The mane might just be feathers, like the poofy feathers. Silly things like that could be the case. A lot of cryptid creatures are actually real creatures that weren't properly identifiable under the right context to more ancient people. Not all cryptids, but some of them were. So might not be as far fetched as we think, but that's the only far fetched thing because outside of that, the only other thing Revelation talks about is earthquakes taking place. That's natural. It only talks about one major earthquake taking place. So it says one earthquake. It says 7,000 people will die. That's not even a big earthquake. Well, it is, but you know what I mean? Like, so that's not that fantastic. Then it talks about a lot of hail, which is just keywords for like rocks. It says a talent weight. I think a talent's like 75 pounds or something. But even if it's not a talent, that's small. That's small. We were talking about space rocks hitting the Earth. Trust me, I researched all this stuff, all the NASA numbers and all that. And I have my asteroid tracker program, right? So if I see an alert for something and it's like in the lunar distance range type thing or a couple lunar distances, and it's like 100 feet across, I only got to worry if that's going to hit where I live, right? Like if it hits miles away, it's not going to really do anything. Actually, well, it might hurt your ears or blow your eardrums out or break some windows. But you get my point. If it hits the next country over, nothing's going to happen, right? So something's got to be hundreds of feet across to it, like 1,000 feet across, to really do severe, like Revelations level type damage. But it talks about hail, even a talent weight 75 pounds. That's small. So these are just little space rocks. So it might just be like a comet for whatever reason, like fragments of a comet get blasted or something, or come apart and we all get hit with hail, or maybe it's just over part of the earth. He doesn't say the whole planet. They don't even have a word for the whole planet in Hebrew. I looked it up that years ago. The word is earth, and earth just means the soil that you're standing on. That's the interesting thing. So all the times it talks about the earth, 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 that's what it's talking about. It's not talking about planet, planet, planet. Right? But at the end of the day, it talks about hail, little rocks coming down from the heavens. Entirely possible. It's not that fantastic. You know what I mean? It talks about angels coming down from the heavens. Well, there's only a few of them that come down, but angels are just celestial messengers of the heavens. So they're just up there and they're going to come down. Now, if we look around the world now, what do we see? Lots of heavenly ones flying around the earth, whether they're good or bad, angels or demons. That's for God to know and not for us to know. But for what we can observe is that there's thousands of them around the world flying around every single day. People see them, videotape them all the time. They're definitely there. Something's happening. You know what I mean? So, and they're watching us, which is what watchers do. They watch. You don't see any aliens invading and conquering us, so they can't all be bad. You know what I mean? You don't see them coming down and interacting with us on a whole basis, just like angels wouldn't do. Angels only come to key people on very key times. God does not allow angels to come down and do all this and that there. When Satan tempted Jesus, Jesus was like, he said, Jesus, cast yourself off this cliff. The angels will come and rescue you, Sidonia, and dash your foot on a rock. Jesus was like, oh, no, 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 don't tempt God and this and that there, right? Because Jesus, you're not allowed to have all this angelic activity on the earth. That's why when the fallen angels stepped out of their bounds of just watching the earth and they came down and fornicated with the women, they committed that great atrocity and they broke all those barriers, right? But anyways, I've done enough waffling for today. An hour, 15 minutes. So, um, yeah, thanks, man. No, they're not fallen spirits. Nobody said they're fallen spirits. Um, they're not fallen spirits. I don't know who you mean. If you mean the fallen angels, they're not spirits. The fallen angels are the beings like Azazel and all them who are cast down to the earth. They're locked up in chains under the earth in a physical prison, and they'll be physically released when the waters of the Euphrates are dried up. So that's who they are. And every living being has a soul and a spirit within it. So yeah, they are spirits, but they're spirits and bodies like we are. That's the thing. They probably have very long lifespans, and they seem like immortal beings to more lesser intelligent peoples. But yeah, I know, and some I'm not getting into debates here, but I know that some people believe, even in Christianity and in Judaism, some people believe that all angels are spirits. That's another debate for another time. But I prove it excellently in my two books there, with all the scripture on the pages. Like there's countless verses that explicitly say the heavens are where the sun, moon, and stars are, like in the constellations. There's countless verses, right? So it's definitely the case. In all the places where messengers are talked about, in almost every case, they come from and go back up to the heavens. Okay, so the heavens are outer space. Messengers are the host of heaven who live in outer space. There's lots of verses that talk about the host of the heavens. It said God made the earth and all of its host, and he made the heavens and all of their host. That's logically showing that he put life in the heavens. Okay, now that we have telescopes, we see that there's other planets out there. That might be where the hosts of the heavens are. And the Bible verses say that the hosts of the heavens stand on God's right and his left side, that they worship God, that they praise God, and that they work for God, right? So when ones are on divine missions, we call them angels. Angels is also a Latin rendering of the word messenger. The biblical term in words in the original text is the word messenger. That's what it actually says. So if you use original translation, original language like I do for my studies, you will not see the word angel anywhere because it doesn't actually exist. It's the word messenger. Okay, so that's what the fallen angels are. They're not spirits, and there isn't a single. I go through it in my books. There isn't a single verse anywhere that says that angels are spirits anywhere, and there isn't a single verse anywhere. This is quite interesting. That says that paradise was or will be or is spiritual. Paradise is not. I grew up in churches, different denominations. They all pretty much taught that heaven is a spiritual place, that angels are spirits, right? You have to get ready to lose your body forever and all this. That's not true. In Eden, they had bodies, right? We all know that. And Jesus in the book of Revelation says in numerous places that we will eat from the tree of that will give us eternal life when we're given access into paradise. So we're going to eat from a plant, to eat a fruit that will give us the ability to keep living. Because if we didn't eat it, it would be like Adam, who was banned from eating it and therefore went mortal. So, in order for us to continue living evermore, we will eat from this tree that is in the garden of paradise. which we will get to eat from. Jesus says this himself in Revelations more than once, right? So that's one example. Another example, when Jesus resurrected, he didn't just have a spirit body. He resurrected in a heavenly body, which is greater than just our physical mortal body, but it was physical. He ate food. And he even told the people, I'm not a spirit. I'm not a ghost. Look at me. I have flesh and blood and I eat food just like you. And he ate fish with them. Right? So that's Jesus showing us that our resurrected, our glorified, our heavenly body is physical. It can eat physical food. But it can also do fantastic things and translate and all this and all that, right? But it's still physical. Is us a greater physical body than what we possess on this mortal planet. That's the thing. Okay, so everything in the Bible shows what the heavens are, what angels are, what heavenly bodies are. Okay, period. There's a difference between um, context of words when you talk about physical and spiritual nature, the spiritual mind, and the law of the flesh, and all that. Paul talks very complicatedly. There's even a verse where it says, they're complaining about how Paul talks too complicatedly, and it's hard for anybody to understand him, and boy, does he, right? But sifting through Paul's madness, he's actually just overly intelligent. And Paul is just very clear on things, but he just describes it in a very ornate way that makes it overly complex. Right? He may not be perfect in his explanation, but he's very, very intelligent. But anyways, um, yeah, so every living thing is a soul, and soul and spirit. Let's just keep it simple. We have a soul and a spirit. I believe what I believe, but I don't need to get into what I believe. We all have a soul and a spirit. We all agree on that. What they are, we don't have to worry about. We have a soul and a spirit. We also have a body. Okay, and the all angels, all messengers, all denizens, hosts of the cosmos do as well. They all have bodies. Now, God probably did create spiritual beings that don't have physical bodies. I completely agree. I definitely do agree. And there probably are angels that are spiritual beings. And I've always said that. However, going by what the Bible says, it says that God created this earth and put life on it, and created the heavens and put life on it. And the life up there is described in the same way that the life on earth is described. If anything, the life up in the heavens is better behaved than the life on this earth. Right? So they're physical beings, and they interbred with women in Genesis 6. I mean, how could I forget that one? That's like the most obvious one. So they're definitely physical, right? That's why all these churches get into these crazy theories. Oh, they were spirits and they possessed the women and they mutated their DNA in their wombs. And it's like, no, 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 no. Why are you so afraid to just face the reality that they're physical beings? Like, why do they even want them to be spirit? Why would you want to lose a physical body and go to heaven as a spirit, like a ghost, for the rest of eternity? This is weird. Why would you want that? It's terrifying. You know what I mean? But that's what so many churches teach. At the end of the day, it's physical. Look at Jesus. Don't listen to me. Look at Jesus. When Jesus resurrected, what did he do? Hey, I'm not a spirit. I'm not a ghost, he said. I'm eating food with you. Boom, that settles it. That's what we're going to get. Right? So it's none of this, oh, you become a ghost forever up in the heavens of ghost land. That's like a heavenly ghost land where everybody's ghosts and God is a ghost. And they call him the Holy Ghost to make it even worse, right? God's not a ghost, right? It's ridiculous. So, anyways, that's not how it is. It's physical, physical, physical. Physical things which are living things have spirits and souls in them. That's where all the spirits and souls are. Now, the abyss is a place of supreme torment where you don't have a body and you don't have a spirit. You're just a soul floating around. You don't have a spiritual body or a physical body. You don't have anything. You're just floating around like a psyche. And in Hades, you don't have a physical body, but you have a spiritual body, which can look and feel and act just like a physical body, but it's just not physical. It's not three-dimensional like that, like a physical body is. And in our realm, we have physical bodies and spiritual body within this one, and our soul, which transcends all. Right? That's how I believe it all works. But it makes perfect sense, and that's what I stick with. So going on that notion, God could create beings that are just soul, hypothetically, or soul and spirit, or soul, spirit, and body. But what does the Bible say we're going to get? Soul, spirit, and body. Bible doesn't say we're going to lose body forever. We're going to lose this body, the mortal body. Yep. You can't take something that's programmed to die up into a place to live forever. You got to get a new body, okay? But there's a new body, right? 2.0. That's not a spirit. So heaven isn't for spirits. You got to eat a fruit to live forever. The angels slept with women and had children with them, hybrids. The angels are physical. Okay, heavens is the outer space. That's what it always was. Satan is an alien. Okay, all the angels are technically aliens. Everybody's aliens. We're all aliens to somebody. That's what it is. It's all cosmic. The Bible is a very cosmic story. And at the end of it all, we get destroyed by cosmic rocks. That's what it says. Heavenly fire, cosmic rocks. The skies will be going red and fiery red. And there's nothing far fetched about that. That type of thing happens all the time on this planet Earth. We know that. You look at the moon, see all the craters, it's because that type of thing happens all the time. So the New Testament doesn't really talk about anything that far fetched. It really, really doesn't. Not really. And the other interesting thing is it says that when the fallen angels are released from under the Euphrates, well, when the Euphrates is dried and the fallen angels are released, presumably from under the Euphrates, that three unclean spirits that resemble frogs go out to deceive. Well, frogs are amphibians, and it's interesting because it's said that the grays, who do resemble frogs with large black eyes and that grayish skin, it is alleged that they are amphibian in nature, the grays. So, that would be quite. And some testimony says that variants of the grays have suction cup like fingers, which is what? Like amphibians. So wouldn't it be interesting if that's like when Satan is, well, I think Satan's released at that point too. So Satan's released, the fallen angels are released, and then all their minions, they're all being released from their underground prisons, right? God's kept them bound under the ground. They're going to be released because what? It says some rock is going to hit the earth, or an angel coming down like a great meteor or falling star will come down to the earth, unleash them. That's the other thing to keep in mind as well, right? Wormwood might be an actual meteor that might hit the earth, but all these other, like the angels coming down, like Revelations 9, where the angel comes down and opens up the pit, I've described that as, I think, a rock hitting the earth. Doesn't have to be though. It could just be a little angel coming down, do 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 do, come down, use his magical key or a real key, dink, open up the gate, and lets them all loose. Right? Could be that, or it could be a giant space rock coming down, blasting a huge opening up into the side of the earth, and letting all these things spill out of some exposed cavern. Right? That's what it could be. So it could be either or. But all of that's still possible on this earth. So, anyways, I gotta get going because the video is way too long. But anyways, thank you all for coming. See if I can read some comments very quickly here. Yeah, human genetic experiments. I've heard that, and Miss Dr. Greer says that as well. I don't believe. I don't know 100% because I'm not working for those people and all that, and I can't say for sure. But from all my research, I don't get with that idea. I think it might be possible, but of all the things that I've heard over 20 something years, that was never a topic. Like that was never a hot topic. That only came out in the last like few years kind of thing. But over all those years, that wasn't talked about. So if it was so true and it had been happening all the time, people would have been talking about it. It wasn't a hot topic. In recent years, Dr. Greer kind of like changed his whole program. I've been following him since day one of Disclosure Project, right? 20 years ago, 20 something years ago. And that changed my life when I saw those 400 military people testify on the press club before, under oath. And I heard it all for the first time, like credible evidence, right? So I was blown away. But from that point, I followed him. Then he got into like yoga stuff. It went like far eastern in his methodology. And then I was like, okay, he's too far out there. God bless his soul. But I still loved all his efforts before that, right? Trying to contact UFOs using meditation and stuff, right? Even if that can work, he just took it down a yoga type path. Whatever, it's too far out there for me. But I think he's even turned back from that now. I watched some recent stuff from him. It seems like he's recessed back from that. Maybe he's stepped out of that bubble, or that bubble burst, and he realized, okay, that's a little bit ridiculous. I don't know. God bless him. Again, I said I think he's great. I went through stuff like that myself, so you know what I mean. I'm not bashing him, but he's on that notion now, real hardcore, that the Greys are like basically all just created by the governments, right? And I just think that's a little bit far fetched. I think it's ridiculous, to be honest. Like, if I was just to be honest with my words, I think it's ridiculous. But again, there's nothing jumping out there saying that in all these like 20 years. That's something like more recent, and I think I can understand why he came to those. I think he's leaning towards doing that now because it's kind of like he has to keep his ball spinning. And I'm not saying that because I think anything bad of him, like he's a charlatan, right? But he has to keep this momentum going, right? And other people are starting to learn things and learn that there's been a lot of frauds out there in UFOlogy. A lot of frauds are getting proven to be frauds now after all these decades, and they're dropping like flies now. So there's a lot of people who everybody thought was credible or just they're not credible. They're just fraudsters, right? And it's just not worth listening to anything that they had said, unfortunately. But millions of people have gotten deceived, right? And I think that because a lot of this fraudery has been exposed so openly now, he's been looking at a lot of stuff that he used to believe and incorporate into his beliefs for like the why and how everything's working with the aliens on the earth. And he's thought, okay, well, this I have to definitely scratch this out because no, that's ridiculous. You see what I mean? And in doing that, he was probably left with a few scenarios that fit with his way of thinking. Everything works. And one of those scenarios is that oh well, most of the Greys must be created by the Earth governments, the Earth peoples, and they're not actual alien creatures. So I went through one night thinking like, why would he think this? Why would he be changing his story so much? And outside of him, I haven't really heard anybody else really talk about that in all these years. It's something more recent. I don't really think it's credible. There's far more evidence, I think, and from like military whistleblowers that they come from another planet. So, um, but they do live here, though. That's the thing. So they're from another place originally, but a lot of the ones here like live here. And the other thing is, all their craft are just scout craft that they fly around in. So, um, but anyways, yeah, that's that one. So I'll get going though. But thank you all for coming. Well, I don't think yoga is satanic. I studied Hinduism for 15 years while I was a Christian, and I because I was being unbiased in my first few years of studying it because I've studied all religions, um, virtually all of them. I saw some nobleness and goodness in it. Let's keep it simple. There is wisdom in it and all of that, and it is monotheism and all of that. And I'm not getting into these arguments and everything type of thing again. But because I saw those principles to it, I was like, oh, okay, there's something to this. And it is more ancient than Judaism and Christianity. So I thought, oh, maybe this was like the religion God gave the earth before the flood, or the religion that God gave the earth after the flood until Moses. You know what I mean? I looked at it from that principle. And at the end of the day, I still do think that it's perfectly fine and all that. There's a difference between Buddhism, which came later, which is like a mutation from Hinduism. um, a lot of the yoga stuff and meditation stuff and the chanting and all that is from Buddhist texts, not Hindu texts, right? I learned that the hard way years afterwards. I was saying all these mantras, and then I learned that oh, it's actually from like Buddhists, and they're like quasi black magic texts, not real, not demonic, but basically summoning elemental spirits and all of that there. So, anyways, but the Hindu stuff is a lot more kosher than you might think. But at the end of the day, I gave it all up. Any alliance that I had with its principles or it because it's just full of too much goofy fluffery. Like even if they say God is one, but they give him 1,000 different names, like literally, and they describe 1,000 attributes of God. And that's great. That's good to teach children and stuff like that because it teaches them all the different ways that God is. Like God is all seeing and all knowing and all powerful and all righteous. All the different names that they have for him and all that. And they have these concepts that God incarnates as heroes and beings. And yeah, God could do and may very well do all those things. But at the end of the day, there's so much of this fluff, just like so many incarnations and so many things and just so much stuff stuffed in there that I think is unnecessary. Like they literally have verses that say like, "Oh, you shouldn't do idolatry. You shouldn't have idols." They even say that, and they even say that a true spiritual person doesn't have to go to a temple, right? They got all that type of stuff in there, but yet their whole religion is still full of all that fluff. So at the end of the day, I compared that to Christianity, which is just like, oh, be good and you'll get into heaven. I was like, okay, I'll pick that. It's a lot more simple. And if God's going to give a religion, you know, I'm not going to say he didn't give Hinduism. He still may have. It may have been like a pre-flood or post-flood form of, what do you call it, like Noahide type religion that God found acceptable on the earth, and maybe he did inspire some of their founding sages. I think that's possible. Um, it's quite a righteous religion. It's actually better than the Bible in a lot of ways, unfortunately, in terms of like Old Testament stuff. But anyways, um, like they don't have animal sacrifices for one. It's peace and love to all living things. The only sacrifice that's in there is literally symbolic about how God sacrifices of himself for all of us. It's not an actual horse sacrifice. But anyways, at the end of the day, I don't think it's satanic though. I wouldn't say that. But if you're talking about like the Buddhist texts, like the tantric stuff, mantra, tantra, and yantra, and all that, there, you're getting too much. There's nothing wrong with mantras, but if you're getting into yantra and mantra and tantra and mantra and all that stuff, and I've forgotten all their names now, but like the cities and the nitties and all these things, which I got deep into, then essentially all you're doing is communicating with spiritual beings or disincarnate beings. Whether they're good or bad, I can't say for sure, but um, yeah, it's just that ain't kosher, I don't think. So I don't think it's satanic though, like the Hinduism side. But all the Buddhist stuff could very well be. But it's not like openly satanic though, right? It's not openly satanic. Even like a gory stuff, which is does do satanic level type things. They're like a cult sect, from Hinduism. Um, it's not completely evil though. They're not evil people. Um, they do cannibalism, for example, but they don't go around killing people to eat them. I trust me, I've read about Agori, but it's not like they're not like Satanists. Let's put it that way. Most of the time, they're pretty humble. They just do. They try to experience the darker side of the existence from this neutral type perspective. Basically, that's the best way to put it. And they think that's a one of the paths to understanding how God and the world works, and that's why they try to experience all those things that they do. But it's definitely a cult path. So um and it does violate a lot of other good principles, which is why it's rejected by a lot of the main bodies. Yeah. Cool. Oh, everything's just a guinea pig to God, but depends what you're thinking of when you say guinea pig. He created everything. um if even if we look at fossils, we don't see fossils of failed creatures. You know what I mean? Like we have certain number of organs in our body because that's what we need to keep ticking over. You don't see birds that had half wings or birds that had one wing failed steps of evolution because none of that happened. God created everything the way it was, the first one, the prototype for each one, set them in motion, and he's obviously, if he's smart and powerful enough to create things like that, like if he could sit down and think, "Oh, I want to make this," and then make it however he did it. If he's powerful enough to do that, he's obviously smart enough. You know what I mean? What was your point again? Where was it? So I've been talking too long. I'm starting to forget what I was talking about. Oh, guinea pigs. What is it? Yeah. If he's smart and powerful enough, if he's powerful enough to do all that, then he's obviously smart. He's not going to be ignorant. And I don't think that he. I'm not saying that you're implying God is ignorant with your statement either. Don't take me wrong. But in terms of being guinea pigs, what I mean is that I think it really would take an ignorant creator to create and use guinea pigs, right? Because if you don't, uh, uh, some a scientist uses guinea pigs because they don't know something, because they're ignorant. If they knew it, then they wouldn't be ignorant of the reality which they're trying to ascertain using experiments with guinea pigs, right? So they use guinea pigs as experiments to learn things from because they're ignorant to that solution that they want to know. So my point is, if God is powerful enough to create all these things, he's obviously quite intelligent. If he's that level of intelligent, he's definitely not going to be ignorant of certain things. He's not going to need to make guinea pigs. So he's not going to create us for experiments. He's not going to have a need to do that, right? Why would God need to create a seagull to learn how seagull wings work if a seagull flies into the side of a building, right? He's not going to need to create seagulls as a guinea pig to test certain seagull things out because he would know what the outcome would be before that. He wouldn't need to build a model and test it. But guinea pigs in the sense that he makes like little planets like we're playing Sim City back in the day, if you know that game, where you build like a little city on the computer and it just runs and operates and you help maintain it. Does he do that? Well, in essence, that's what it is. He's created things everywhere, but they're designed to operate and keep going. Now, mortality in this world, in my opinion, is not the way that it's meant to be everywhere. Like mortality is a failure. And there's no real reason why things can't keep going. We even found jellyfish that do that now, right? So, I used to always say there's no logical reason why things on this earth have to die. We all just do for a reason, and blah, blah, blah. And they find this jellyfish that does keep regenerating. So, I mean, it is biologically possible. There are biological reasons why we die. It's because of apoptosis in certain things. And if those things could be stopped, or if different beings didn't have those problems, then they wouldn't age like that. We might be able to live like a million years, or there might be a fruit somewhere that regenerates you in some way like that. It just does something to your DNA. It might be just some crazy fruit from some planet somewhere, and it does that, and then bam, you're got another million years left to go. You know what I mean? Just keep doing that, and you're good to go. So it could be stuff like that there too, or it could be that there's this whole spiritual vibe which gets more like into yoga, where when you're really strong with your connection with God on like this meditational yoga type level, where you're not really focusing on the body, but it's being one on one with God on this like higher level. If you're doing that, that could be possible too, right? But, anyways, I've talked enough. Everybody, take care, folks. This is the longest video I've done in a while, but um, yeah. Well, that's the thing I've said before. Everybody is fixed on time. When atheists or scientists say, "Oh, religion is so funny because they say that God had to come first, but what came before God, right? Or what created God, or where did God come from?" They think that they stooped, they what do you call it? Stumped religion. No, they haven't. The whole concept of time, space, and matter, like I showed earlier, is impossible, right? Something else must exist. The point is, time cannot exist. You can't have time because when did it start? Time cannot have a start. It's impossible. If time started at any point, then what came before that start? What time was there before it started? So it's a paradox. You can't have it. So there's no time. So there's never a time when there wasn't God. Follow me? There was always God. He is a cosmic mind. Whatever this cosmic mind is, whatever it looks like, whatever it is in its raw form, like that's what always was. There was no time before that. That's the point. Is when you think, oh, time, space, and matter, there had to be a start. Well, you can't have a start. There always was God. There was never nothing. There was always something. That's something I learned years ago in my spiritual journeys. There was never nothing. There was always something. So there you go. That's the answer to that one. Nothing came before God. That's the thing. What it sounds crazy, but it's logical though. As mind bending as it is logical, right? Time cannot have a start. Nothing came before time. Time must be impossible. There's got to be something else. And by that notion, nothing came before God because there's no time before God. Time is not this ruler with a start and a finish. If you take away that start and the finish, what are you looking at? You know what I mean? The mind can't picture it. That's if there is a time, that's what it's going to be like. There's no start and finish, right? So it's not what came before God, what comes after God, right? I don't know what you would say, what's alongside God. Maybe that's what it is, but that's my point. Nothing came before it. It just always was what this is, okay? And what is. And the thing that is that cosmic mind, which is God. Everything that does exist is us emanating as part of or being exuded from that cosmic mind. So, like, even science has said that there's evidence, like actual credible evidence, that we're living in a virtual reality illusion. That would make sense if we are literally just a product of God's mind. Okay? But that doesn't belittle us though, because God's mind is so powerful it can create bodies and diamond and planets, right? Doesn't make us any less real, but I'm just saying, right? It's kind of cool to think about. But there's probably cosmic pixels, so to speak. That's what I think it is. That God's mind is capable of emanating this field of cosmic pixels. Um, and I explained it in one video. I don't even know if I have the video up anymore or which channel I have it on, but hopefully I can find where I wrote it down one day. But his mind just emanates out this field of pixels. This is how I think it works. And I just can't remember exactly how I worded it all. But I remember back in the day, you had those games that were like a board and it was full of nails, and you could press your hand on it and it would make like an impression on the other side. So if you take your hand off of it, your hand's made an impression here, and it's also made an impression on the other side. So it's kind of like that there. If you think of each nail as a pixel, and then when you make the impression, which would be like with the invisible force, right? You make the impression on the pixels, and the pixels form an image. So the image is indirectly formed by this invisible force, right? It's by that like mysterious principle that I think these pixels might work. So God has this, he wants to make something happen that he's thought about. So however he does it, like sends out this thought form or thought wave, and his power just makes it be. Like that's the level of authority and power, because there's no rules of physics binding him down. Like he trumps all that stuff and he makes all those laws, you know what I mean? So nothing's binding him. So he sends out this like thought wave. It goes out by his omnipotent power. It like emanates across the pixels, and just like the invisible force, it makes that image. Or in just like fashion, it makes a resultant, you know, domino effect of forces to make a resultant outcome, right? So there you go. Cause and effect, physical things, time, space, matter is all because of the pixels. Okay, and the pixels did have a start. Okay, in this sense, right? The pixels had a start when he first started emanating them, but God didn't have a start because God is beyond the pixels. God is beyond time, space, and matter, right? But the time, space, and matter, as we perceive, are an erroneous concept, but nonetheless, there's something similar to them, which we know them by. There's something similar to time, like as we know them. There is something like that. We just don't understand it fully. Those things exist amidst the pixels, right? So, like I said, the pixels can represent images or other impressions, like force forms and all of that, like the bundle of forces making something happen and all of that, right? All action reaction sequences in any action event, right? All of that there is represented by the pixels, right? So God emanates this mind wave out, whatever you want to picture it as. It ripples all those pixels. The pixels alter their form, and that shape, that impression is done. That's how God makes something happen throughout the cosmos. So He wants to go create. You send it the thought ripple, bro, those pixels light up, do whatever they do, right? And the whole planet's formed and all of that there. God hasn't had to touch it per se, because all those pixels are literally part of his mind. It's an emanation. Like there's nothing outside of God. Like everything is part of God. That's the all. And even all the religions, well, most of the religions, the Bible ones do, they'll say this anyways at the top. So there's nothing outside of him. So everything that is was created from him. It's not like God existed and then reached into a fruit basket and pulled out something. Oh, like no. Like everything that he created was created from him. It's not that he had to take part of himself out or had to duplicate part of himself. He has all ability. There's no laws of physics binding him back. He creates any laws that he wants, right? So he sits there and thinks, okay, I want to create things. If I want to create things, I need a grid matrix of pixels. Not just visual pixels, but dimensional pixels, everything, right? For all forms of things and forces and actions and everything. So he has this matrix field of pixels, which is like quasi dimensional. It's inexplainable. I wouldn't bother explaining it right now. And on that grid form, he makes everything that he wants just by his thought forms. And there you go. So, and that's how, and by the very quantum entanglement of that, because it's his own mind, like how long does it take for this side of your head to talk to that side of your head? It's instantaneous, right? So if everything is within the mind of God, so to speak, then from one side of the universe to the other, it's just the one side of the mind of God. It's going to be instantaneous. So it's not going to be a great feat for God to go across the universe, right? It's literally everything that the universe is, even if it's a tangible place, and even if God incarnates in a physical body into that tangible universe place, and it's the size of a universe, he is still God who trumps all the laws of physics. They bend and fluctuate according to his will, right? He can go from one side to the other instantaneously, just as quick as his mind can be two hemispheres at once, right? That's my point. So that's how God is and works, and how everything else works, I think. So, um, let's see what else. It's like one of the only times I actually get to talk to people and stuff. I see we have one newer person, Daisy. Oh, welcome, Daisy. Let's see. No, but there is never nothing, Serial. That's my point. There is never nothing. Our concept of nothing comes from our erroneous mindset of time, space, and matter, and everything we've been geared up for. Man, remember, people hundreds of years ago used to think that the sky had a glass dome that had holes in it with lights in it. Okay, some people still believe that today, but let's not go there. Um, some people believe that. Some people believe different things. Like in Islam, they believe that falling stars were God shooting angels out of the sky. I mean, some of them might be falling angels, but we all know what meteors are now, right? A lot of people believed wacky things back then. But what was it? Where is it? Whether there was nothing or not. But we're so used to things and things being and existing, and there's got to be a start to this and a start to that. But once you start realizing, well, things like I said, there is never nothing. There's always something. So just remember that there was never nothing. There was always something, and there was never a time before time or a start to time. And time, the real time, is not like what we think of it as. Like what we think of it as is a impossible paradox. There was never nothing, and God always was, right? There was just never nothing. Like we have this concept, oh, there must have been something before him. That concept that there must be something before him is erroneous. Like if you're taking time out of the equation like that, there is no start to time, and that there was never nothing, there was always something. It's like I don't know how to describe it. It's like a sphere. It's like it's not a linear line which has a start and a finish, an imaginary, impossible nothing beforehand. No, it's like it's completed and perfected. There is never nothing. There is always something. It kind of makes me picture like sphere. You know what I mean? Just in my mind's imagery. There's always something, and you couldn't just start off in the beginning like that with the laws of physics. That's what no scientists ever point out, and I've pointed out before. Where do all these laws of physics come from? Right? They might say, oh, it's just natural forces. That's what they end up being like. A lot of these laws of physics are pretty convenient. You know what I mean? 2 pi r squared. A lot of them are pretty convenient. A lot of these laws of physics are very complicated. And at the end of the day, where did these laws of physics, where did the principles for the laws of physics to exist in, where did these principles come from? Like, when did the universe, before anything existed, wake up and say, hey, I want pi r squared to exist? You know what I mean? Because I mean, it's not just like, oh, pi r squared as a physics principle just spontaneously existed today, like on the news, back in primordial dawn. Like, you're not going to hear that. Like, there had to be a reason that every element of physics law exists. There has to be a reason why it does and why it came into being and the way it is. There has to be reasons for all this. But science doesn't have an explanation for that. They just say, oh, the laws are. Well, where did the laws come from? Well, I don't know. They're all just there. That's nature. That's what they say, right? Because they can't explain it. It make more sense that they were designed, right? That all these things were designed. So all these patterns in math and all that, easier to say, oh, it's just nature. Nature produces patterns. Well, they could also be designed patterns. They might just be the resultant thing of numbers and maths and how maths works. At the end of the day, what designed the principles of maths? Like it's easy to say, oh well, it's just blah 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 of maths. Yeah, but what designed the principles of maths? Like what any single thing you can think of in terms of physics. Like where don't just look at the law and the thing of what it is, look at the invisible, unseen part of it. Like where did the principles for it to even exist come from? Right? Where, for example, 2 pi r. Why does 2 pi r? I mean, we accept this real legit formula. Okay, it exists. All right. Well, why does it exist everywhere throughout the universe? May it not exist like that somewhere in the universe? You know what I mean? Most people would say, oh, no, it has to exist because our numbers are and blah, blah, blah. That's math. Some mathematician could explain it better. Okay, fine. Where did that principle come from then? Because you're saying that there's this principle that it's blah, 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 blah. It's going to always be like that. Where'd that principle come from? Because when you're talking about primordial dawn, there's no rules for anything. You know what I mean? So if you're talking about everything's this evolution, there is no God, it's going to be sporadic, chaotic, like blip blop until out of what, mind you as well, because that's a paradox. But if you're just going to imagine that, there's just no way that you're going to get laws of physics and all of these formulas and just all the, sorry, first of all, the principles for the laws of physics to even exist, right? It's not like the universe sat there and thought, you know what, I want gravity to exist. Let me think of all the ways that gravity can exist and can be made to exist and be viable. And then once the ground is set for it, not the ground, but once it's able to exist, then it's like, oh, now gravity can exist by these principles. You know what I mean? No. Like, where did those invisible principles come from? That's my point. So, all these things, all these invisible things had to be created, like the bird and the egg. Which came first? They had to be created. They cannot come from nowhere. Even principles of physics law cannot come from nowhere. Where'd they come from? No scientist could tell you that. It was easy, 2 pi r is around the universe, or whatever, E equals mc squared, or anything else that they want to use. Like, okay, where did the principles for that come from? Right? You kind of have to explain a bit like I did, but where did the principles for that come from? Oh, easy to say E equals mc squared. Why does it work like that? Why isn't E equals m minus c? Oh, it's because it doesn't work like that. It works by E equals mc squared. Oh, okay, well then why does it work like that? Well, they wouldn't be able to tell you that. They say, well, that's the way it is, right? Well, it's the way it is because the way it is has been set up favors E equals mc squared. So why is the universe set up to favor E equals mc squared? And what is it? Pi 2 pi r. I can't remember anymore. Pi r squared and 2 pi r for circle maths, right? The universe where we are in physics is set up where these are viable laws and formulas because that's the way it's set up here, right? Obviously, those principles existed here and set up that type, those parameters, right? So, anyways, I was doing an Uber waffle tonight. Might as well cover everything since we've gone on 2 hours. This is bloody ridiculous. But it's good to talk about all this stuff. So I'm kind of repeating these things because I kind of feel like in the back of my mind I deleted a lot of videos off my various channels. So I may have deleted some of my deeper talks on intellectual type stuff like this, what I like to call intellectual. But at the end of the day, I also like kind of enjoy intellectual stuff more than religious stuff. But I do like Christianity because it's not really dogmatic. It's just be good. You know what I mean? Stop doing bad stuff and be good. That's the whole religion summed up. Really, really simple. Baptism is stop doing bad, be good. You get the Holy Spirit. There you go. Bam. Do you see the Holy Spirit? No, it's invisible. Do you feel it? No. You're approved. There you go. You know what I mean? So it's very, very simple. You're a good person. And I believe even good animals are redeemed at the end too. Why not talk about everything here, right? Good animals too. Why? Because they're living beings. So I do think I still have a video up on my channel if anybody's interested in that. About 40 minutes long. All right, I did a study, went through all the verses on God's relationship with animals. He definitely loves all the animals, right? Their spirits go to him when they die and all that good stuff. He blesses them, he helps them when they die, takes their spirits to go be with them. All spirits go back to be with God. The animals are definitely up in the heaven. Like the heavenly visions talk about animals. There's definitely animals up there. All right, so, and it says in Revelations that and in the Old Testament prophecies that the carnivorism will be removed, the animals will be at peace in the new earth. Hello, animals, right? So there will be animals. So animals will go to heaven. So, anyways, folks, take care. That's the longest talk I've done in years. I used to do long ones all the time, but this is the longest one in years. Thank you all for coming. Um, I look sleepy because I work hard. It's very, very late. I'm very hungry. Wish I could show you the cat sleeping next to me, Mr. Kitty. I don't know if I can. Maybe I can. Here, let's see. Get Mr. Kitty on film. Let's get this out of the way. Oh, I got a cat. Let's see if I can wake him up. I've never had him on camera before. Hey, kitty. Kitty. Hey, kitty. What's up? What's up, buddy? Say hi. Look. You're a movie star now. Look. Did I ruin your dream? What dream were you having, kitty? You eating lots of food? He's all vegged out. Anyways, I just wanted to get the cat on camera. Every time I've tried to, it doesn't work out. So, anyways, take care, folks. See you all later.